Hi, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Justice. I'm your host, Suzette Speaks. I'm so excited to be with you today. I have a special guest out of South Florida. She is going to be running for the congressional seat that is now open in South Florida. And we have a special election coming up November 2nd. And I wanted you to meet all of the candidates. She is a dynamic woman. She is of Haitian descent, and she is a powerhouse in terms of healthcare and the healthcare industry. She is a CEO. She has lobbied in DC. She's a wife. She's a mom. I could go on and on about her, but I want to bring her in and introduce you to none other than Miss Sheila Cherfilus McCormick. Welcome. How are you, Sheila?
Hi, Suzette. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today with you.
I love being around other dynamic women. So it's actually my pleasure that you're here today. I want to welcome our viewers. We are simulcasting on Jamaicans.com. What's up to all of the folks watching on that platform, our YouTube platform, our Let's Talk Justice page, wherever you're watching from. We're so grateful that you found us. Go ahead and press that like button or subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and leave a comment. We're here because we want to recreate the public square. Oftentimes, you see a ballot, and those living in Palm Beach and Broward County will have the pleasure and the opportunity to vote for Miss Sheila Cherfilus McCormick, and you don't know who you're voting for. So today, we're going to get to know her. We're going to ask her some tough questions. But first, I want to take a moment of silence because we're recording this on September 11th. For those who are watching around the world, and of course, those watching here locally in South Florida, we all have been impacted by this day of remembrance. Hi, Keisha. Thank you for dropping a comment. Again, don't be afraid to chime in. Leave a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. But as I was saying, we are going to take a quick moment of silence just to remember our brothers and sisters in New York, in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, at the Pentagon, who lost their life 20 years ago. First of all, can y'all believe it's 20 years? The time has gone by so quickly. But we want to just pay respects to all those who lost their lives in this moment. Let's just share our thoughts. Thank you so much. Well, we have some business to do, my dear, and I'm excited to see you. You just literally came from canvassing, am I right? Door to
Yes,
door?
yes. We're door
So
to
the
door
life
every weekend.
Wow, every weekend. So the life of politicians. Listen, guys, if you want to be a public servant, trust me, you're going to be very busy. Thank you for taking the time, Sheila. I want to start out by just introducing you or asking you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about you, where you're from, and your family.
Sure. Well, my name is Sheila Cherfilus McCormick, as you just said, and I'm originally from New York. I was born in New York. I moved to South Florida around the age of 13. I moved to Miramar. So Miramar has been my home for years now. I went to Howard University for my undergraduate degree, University of Maryland for my master's in business administration. From there, I went to St. Thomas University for law school. During that time period, I was a single mother raising my daughter, and she has a learning disability. And I was just really working hard trying to figure out how can I get resources for her. Luckily, I was in healthcare regulation at that time, where I was doing different events and different readings on the Affordable Health Care Act. And I started going to DC and advocating at that time. I was invited to talk about how do we implement the Affordable Health Care Act successfully, especially in minority areas, and how can we ensure that we're having access to it. And so that's how I got started in the whole process of going to DC and understanding lobbying and understanding just how do we as people influence the political and policy making. And I found it extremely exciting. In addition to that, from that time, I became the CEO of Trinity Healthcare Services. And what ended up happening during COVID is we saw the magnifying glass be put on the inequalities that happen in healthcare. And so, for years we were fighting healthcare inequality. I have a nonprofit in which we have a floating clinic in which we were doing all kinds of testing for high blood pressure, diabetes, just really bringing services to the community. And with COVID now, it just became so much for us that we couldn't just handle meeting the needs of our healthcare professionals who are putting their lives at risk, and also the needs of the community. So we kind of fought this governor and said that we need to have more minorities on the contract to do testing and vaccinations. And our company ended up being the largest Black woman ran company doing testing and vaccination throughout the entire state. We worked with Joe Biden's minority plan. and ensuring that the minorities got vaccinated. And so today I'm here talking about the importance of what's going on in our community today, especially when it comes to the virus, the education, just everything that we have going on, because we find ourselves in this time of an election coming where we don't really have representation, but we're really at one of our most vulnerable moments in this district. So thank you so much, Suzette.
I'm so excited. As y'all can see, she is highly knowledgeable, particularly when it comes to healthcare. She has a 20-year track record. I was reading your bio last night and I was like, whoo, how can we show the people, first and foremost, who Sheila the person is? I find that you are very inspirational just as a woman, as a human being, as someone who's overcome odds. That, we have to, get to know you. And I know you're so knowledgeable when it comes to policy. I don't want to forget that, there's a person behind all these accomplishments. So when you moved to Miramar from New York, you decided to go to law school. What was that like for you growing up in South Florida? You lived in the district basically your whole life. So tell us about like your childhood and what it was like in the South Florida community you knew back then, community you knew when you were growing up.
Yeah, well, when I was growing up, when I was younger, we were in New York. My mother actually was a maid at the Waldorf Astoria, and my dad was driving taxi cabs. And so for us, the only real outlet was education, education, education. And it came to a point where we were living, which is in Rosedale in Queens, where the school systems were terrible, just terrible. And when they thought about us going to high school, and the closest high school was Springfield, where people were getting shot, they said, oh no, we got to get out of here. So, my ideas of when I was coming to Florida was like, oh, it's going to be great. But when I got here, it was kind of a little different. The way they viewed Haitians at that time, we were called boat people. And it was surprising for me because where I was in New York, it was never like that. And it just reminded me how much.
Welcome to the South.
Right?
And I say that with love, but yeah, it's not New York. So you go from like Queens, New York, and you come to South Florida in the 80s and you're like, whoa, okay, this is what we doing. Okay.
Right. So it was just so different. And it just reminded me about my foundation, right? Which is work hard, work hard. And at that time when you're not really supposed to succeed. And it was really catching up at the moment because the educational system here was just so much more advanced than New York. So even coming here, I felt like reading was difficult, coming here for high school from New York. That just showed you the educational gap. So I worked really, really hard. And it was always like, I even remember being in high school where they were like, oh, you're not going to be able to go to a 4-year college. You should just settle. And there's always these expectations of us not to succeed. And I was like, no, I can do it. And I worked hard to overcome every obstacle. So it seems like every time I was told, oh, you can't do it, or you're not going to be able to resuscitate your business. We were able to resuscitate it where we were making more than 20 million in profit per year. Oh, you're not going to be able to go to college or to go to law school. Like once I got pregnant with my daughter, they're like, oh, you're a statistic now.
Oh Lord, they wrote you off, sis.
Right.
Once we see that, we're like, oh, she's lost. Like I think about that, and just to back up, because we don't want to pass over the fact that mom is a hospitality worker or hotel industry worker at the Waldorf Astoria, and dad's a taxi cab driver. People don't expect a lot when it comes to socioeconomic, predisposition. We have a lot of assumptions sometimes, not everyone, but the society at large can be very judgmental and have low expectations of folks who are coming from, very modest means. Where did you get, like, going to law school doesn't just pop into one's head. Where did you get the idea or the concept, even after, getting pregnant and raising a daughter? How do you get the, the role model, or who did you use to say, yeah, I'm still going to do what I need to do and be the best person I can be?
Well, it was Thurgood Marshall, because I had to watch a lot of TV and kind of translate it for my grandmother, because my grandmother who watched us, she couldn't speak English. So I would be translating for her all the time, translating papers. And there was like a commercial and it was talking about Howard University and the legacy and Thurgood Marshall. And I remember I was like, I'm going to be a judge. I'm going to be a Supreme Court justice, and I'm going to be the first Haitian American woman. And that's where my mind was like focused. That's what I was going to do. But when I got to undergrad, I loved Howard, and it was everything that I expected it to be. I wanted to be part of that legacy of excellence. And that's really what I was looking for, because as a child of immigrants, this is you're home now and you don't really have a tangible legacy where you can go back and see your parents' home or family like that going back to Haiti. So I wanted to be part of a legacy, and I knew that early on. And I just loved the feel. So I said, I'm going to go to Howard. I'm going to be part of this legacy. And once I went to Howard and I had my daughter, that's when faith kicks in, right? Because now it's like, you could say I'm going to do all these things, but as it gets difficult, can you be relentless? Like, do you even believe in yourself? And that's where a lot of self-talk comes in. Because you're like, I can do it, and I can push through. What really happened was when I graduated, I was in a program at George Washington. And when I was pregnant, I was trying to finish all my courses. And I ended up getting a B- in a master's program. And if you've done a master's program, you have to have your grades over a B. And so I ended up being put on academic probation. I had to finish that class. And I was finishing that class with a 3-week baby in my hand. And in that class, I got another B-. And so I was so heartbroken. And I had to determine in myself, like, is this going to be the end, or can I fight through? And I pushed through, and I said, no, we could do it. So I started over that master's in business administration at University of Maryland. And I just kept on pushing. But with every push, I kept on feeling internally like God was telling me there's more work to do. And that's really what kept on pushing and pulling. And the days I couldn't fight, I had great friends who fought for me and dragged me when I didn't want to be there. So I thank God every day for that.
That's so wonderful. It takes, first of all, good role models. I think representation matters. Funny, like you, I remember writing, I don't know if it was like a 5th grade essay on being Supreme Court justice. That was already a concept I had. I was like, I have a friend girl to this day that reminds me, do you remember you said you was going to be a Supreme Court justice? And I was like, how did that even come in my mind? 5th grade. Like, it's beautiful to know, the Thurgood Marshalls and the trailblazers that helped lay the foundation for, Black attorneys like ourselves. It's amazing to know, and I'm sure they are proud and smiling down at how far we've come and what we are trying to even accomplish even more now that we're stepping forward into politics. So I want to know what makes a nice lady like you. You have, first of all, let me get to some of your business acumen, because I want people to really understand what it is that you've done. 10 years in DC, helping to shape healthcare policy, owner of your own. I want to take it, from you. Go ahead and tell us about your business experience as we get into why I think, you are going to bring such a wealth of knowledge, if elected, in terms of like the healthcare, COVID-19 and all that. Tell us about how you got involved, first of all, in healthcare and what your career in healthcare has been like.
Well, I got involved in healthcare on the healthcare regulation side. And I was looking more because after law school, I went into healthcare regulation. And it was during the time when a lot of companies were shifting over to electronic documents, and they were trying to adopt the Affordable Health Care Act. And as I was getting into it in the healthcare sphere, they didn't have a lot of attorneys in at that moment, especially smaller businesses, smaller organizations. And so I just could pick it up. I just understood the law. I understood how we merged the two, even how you implement. I'm not a practitioner, but I do know how to guide as far as the implementations. And I did extremely well in that process, to the point where our business just actually started just doing so well. No kind of deficits, no issues, just nothing. And everybody's like, well, how did you bring the business to that standard? And I told them, I explained to them how we implemented it, how we went through the Affordable Health Care Act. And then one of the associations that we actually advocate for asked me to come to DC. It was the National Association of Healthcare and Hospice. They asked me to come to DC to talk about how we were able to implement it successfully and how we can help other businesses and other people in the community access healthcare. And that's how it started. And it just kind of kept on turning and becoming more and more involved, because we looked at first the Affordable Health Care Act. How do we get it to everyone? Despite the governor, right, who didn't expand it in Florida, how do we really implement it? There was a lot of demonstrations at the time, and so we were spearheading it in our organization. And then it kind of started getting more, because as I was in DC, I would go over there and lobby about healthcare, and I would come home to my daughter who had a learning disability, my daughter who just felt devastated and she couldn't, learn. She was having issues. The teachers were awesome, and we tried everything we could do. And then we started talking to other families, and I realized that for me to even try and fix this, I didn't have the money to do it. I didn't have the wherewithal. And so I even left work for a year looking for resources. And when I left work, that's when I realized that there's certain people who get help and it directly correlates with money. And at that point, the number of kids who were being diagnosed with attention deficit, autism, it was skyrocketing for our generation. But I did not see the congressional response. I spoke to members of Congress. They even acknowledged they knew that it was such a huge issue. And so I started really honing in and advocating for not just my daughter, but everyone in our community who was looking for resources. And so we lobbied for more resources for children with disabilities for more than 10 years. And finally, we actually got 3 billion passed. Now it's probably been 3 months, and the state of Florida received 200 million for kids with disabilities. So I'm extremely excited about that. But that just shows us that we can do what they say can never happen, right? They said you'll never get the money. It's not available. And look, it came out of thin air. One of the things I proposed also, they said, well, we can't give schools that, through the federal clauses. And I said, well, let's give it to them through the healthcare bill. And that's how it came down, how I suggested, let's put the money through healthcare, because learning disabilities they classify them as health issues, mental health issues. So we're doing the work, and I'm excited. In COVID, like I said, we've just been on the front lines. We hired over 1,200 minorities to service minorities. We were part of the Biden minority mission, and we serviced minorities in vaccination throughout the entire state. We vaccinated over 300,000 people. And what was fascinating about that is we actually hired from the community to knock on doors. And so I saw the growth, and that's what we need to do. If we can get us serving us, then we'll see a transformation in our district.
Sheila, when you speak, and I have to say this as like a sister here from South Florida, when you drop your numbers, it sounds like, oh, we just vaccinated 300,000 people. We got employed over 1,200 people. I'm like, you created jobs, sis. Let's slow that down and let's digest it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you are such a phenomenal leader that I don't want people to, pass over that, because especially as women, we don't often get a chance to toot our horns. Mm-hmm. And we don't get a chance to, really kind of show the, complete picture of, on top of being a wife and mother, you're killing the game. So you got about 10 jobs, sis. And she's like, I've been on DC, I got on Capitol Hill, I've done this, I got $100 million, $200 million. Florida has this much money. Now we're doing this. We're fighting with children with disability. You're just rolling it off. But I just want to take, time to, and I keep slowing you down because I want people to really digest what you just said is freaking incredible. And again, I'm not partial to anyone in this race, but as to you as a person, I'm always in awe, particularly of women, because we carry so much additional burdens and responsibilities. Men do too, but in a different way for us. I don't want to gloss over it. I want people to kind of like hear the numbers and like really digest, wow, sis is hiring people. Sis hired over 1,200 people and vaccinated over 300,000 people. Like, these are numbers that we kind of just say, but I really want, to stop and slow down and make sure people hear you. We hear you. I agree. Nice job, Sheila. Yes. Kind of, we want to make sure, your accomplishments speak for themselves. And I want to tie this into obviously why you're running for Congress, because there's a special election coming up. And, we have gone without representation in a seat for quite some time now. For those who don't follow politics, basically the rules are when someone like the great Congressman Alcee Hastings, who passed on earlier this year, after a battle with cancer, his seat needed, to be, an election needed to be held to replace him. And we could have called it, or the governor could have called it earlier, but he decided to wait till November. So people in our district from parts of South Broward, Fort Lauderdale is the county seat down here. So parts of Miramar, Plantation, Sunrise, Lauderdale Lakes, Lauderhill, Tamarack, North Lauderdale, going all the way up to Palm Beach. And if you don't know these cities, I'm sorry, I'm representing for the 954 right now, 561, Broward County, Palm Beach County. We're doing it for you today. But we just wanted to make sure that we are both aware of an election and who's running and who would be the best representative for how many people are in a district. Do you know how many people live in this district?
We have over 300,000 voters and close to 500,000 who are in the district, but not everybody votes. So yeah, we
Wow.
have a lot.
So 500,000 people have gone without representation for several months now. And so we're here discussing, who she is. We are going to be doing this every Saturday up until the election with various candidates. We just wanted you to be informed and obviously not about just her, but about the issues. Because one thing I love about these conversations is that it brings in that person's expertise and it actually helps, educate everyone on what's happening. And I want to talk about your desire to be a public servant because with so much going on, your business is successful, making millions of dollars. You've been back and forth speaking to Congress people, lobbying for health care that will protect, the most vulnerable. You've been doing all that. And now it's like, okay, public service? Really? We want to do that? So why public service and why now? Why would you choose to enter this race? What was the impetus?
It was just I saw it, we weren't moving, and a lot of the things that we do and we're servicing, like my job to provide healthcare and to hire people. A lot of people don't realize how healthcare sits in the federal office. Medicaid, Medicare, all of that is sitting there. What drugs you take, the price of pharmaceuticals, at jobs, even it all is couched in federally. And so after lobbying for 10 years and going there, and I always tell people, because there's some lobbyists who get paid to go, but when you're coming to advocate for low-income families, for Medicaid, Medicare, that is not a paid job. That is, I'm coming to fight for us. And I always say that it's called
We say
begging.
pro bono. That's
Right.
pro bono.
Thank you. It's pro bono and it's called begging because you come there with a humble spirit and you say, please.
Yes.
Okay.
No, but people from lower economic levels don't have the money to pay lobbyists.
That's right.
So if someone is going up there to fight, it's because they really care. I don't mean to interrupt. Keep going. Keep going.
Right. So it's us going there. And so like I said, I spent 10 years fighting, and it was a group of us for us 10 years later to be getting 200 million. Now, if I was in Congress, I wouldn't have to be begging for that long. Do you get what I mean? We
Yeah.
can expedite what's going on sooner and quicker. And that's when I got fed up because it's just taking too long. And mind you, as the clock is ticking, it doesn't mean we're not like staying still. We're losing funding that's coming in, taxing that's coming in is being spent somewhere else. Federal jobs that are coming in are being captured somewhere else. It's not coming into our district. Every job that we even got, every contract that we got, we fought hard to get that, which it shouldn't be like that when you have policies that say that it has to be distributed equitably, that they're actually supposed to be prioritizing certain groups, and we just don't see it here. And members of Congress really aren't taking it seriously enough to enforce it. They'll have certain meetings, everybody will do a study, and every time I hear I'm going to do a study, I'm like, that means you're not going to do anything, because being in Congress means you have the power of the pen and you can do larger investigations and actually have results and take result steps. So those are the things that I said, we just can't sit back anymore. I love this district, and I physically saw this district, especially in Miramar and our other offices in West Palm. I saw how we grew. I saw the transformation of how when we hired and how they were getting paid. And I always say, when I look at my staff and I see them doing better, I say, I'm leaving an impact, and I know I can do more in this district. The recent fight that we've been having has been, how do we recover? And it's so important to me that our district is not left out of that recovery process. We see that there's a whole bunch of different groups coming in. We have the child income tax credit, which is wonderful. I believe that families need it, but that's not equitable. In our district, we have over 50% that are 55 and older. That means that there is nothing being done for their recovery. So I can't say I'm going to represent our district and not propose something that's equitable. What about people who don't have kids? Are we saying because you don't have a child, then you shouldn't have a way of recovering? Because we know there aren't jobs. We know that the economy is short.
Prices going up.
Right. And so buying a house,
Mm-hmm.
housing, paying rent, we are aware that there's a big issue, economic issue. So I've been asking for an equitable recovery check system. And that's where I started asking for recovery checks of $1,000, at least until we recover. We found a way.
Yeah, let's get into that. Thank you. So for those of you watching from all around, thank you so much. We are excited to have a candidate for the Florida Congressional District 20. This seat is up for a special election on November 2nd. And I'm Suzette Speaks, and you're watching Let's Talk justice. So we're excited to speak with one of the candidates in this race, Miss Sheila Cherfilus McCormick. And she is telling us a little bit about her background and why she chose to run in this race. Clearly, she's passionate about healthcare. Clearly, she's passionate about what she just said, economic recovery. And before, okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions. All right. Did you lobby for people or businesses? What company did you work for at the time you were lobbying? Was it a corporate or a nonprofit? Okay, all right. Miss Pierre Grant, I can count on you to bring the hard question.
So when I was going,
can you talk a little bit more about that? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so we did extensive lobbying and advocacy with the National Cannabis Association and the Minority Cannabis Association. That is a nonprofit organization. And at that point, what we were trying to ensure was that Black businesses were being carved out. In Florida, they have the way that the state law is, since there is no real federal law about it, is that it's all verticalized. So it's very hard to get in. And we saw that they weren't putting together when they wanted to put forth and say that, okay, cannabis is legal, the legalization, we wanted them to also wipe out and expunge any kind of cannabis charges that you had also. And so we lobbied for that. We fought for that. We got it passed in 2018 that they were going to actually do the safe banking, which would help some of the businesses that were outside the state actually be able to bank. But then the Senate didn't pass it. I also lobbied with the National Association of Home Health and Hospice. And we did that for a few years, and I'm even still involved with them. The biggest bill that we were pushing there was for reimbursements to help nurses get paid more money, which is imperative because we see that most of our CNAs, HHAs, they're not getting paid that. And that directly correlates with Medicaid and Medicare funding. So that's imperative to why we see such low rates in healthcare. And those positions are mostly minority positions. And so we have to see that you can't be getting paid $8 an hour because Medicaid is paying 10 for a position that you're working night and day. I also did a lot of work with different Autism Speaks, making sure that autistic kids can have access. Just a lot of different other groups that we came up when we were speaking with. Go ahead.
To interrupt, those last two, are they nonprofits, the Home Health and the Autism Speaks?
They're all nonprofits. So every single group that's actually advocating, they're all nonprofits. So there is no for-profit corporation lobbying.
That you lobby for? Listen, Dr. Grant is on it. She got one more question. I see her. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. She says, what is her thoughts on her predecessor? Sheila ran for Congress in 2020. Is her platform the same? What say you?
So my platform has always been consistent. It's always been consistent. It's always been the same. If anything, I didn't have disagreements with the congressman about what his platform was. I feel like we disagreed on his view with banks, especially payday lenders. We had some disagreements, but my biggest reason for running is because I saw that he wasn't passing bills in the last 10 years. Even when I took a deep dive into why we couldn't pass a bill. And I say we, because that means District 20 has not had a bill that touches and concerns us specifically getting passed in 10 years. When I took a deep dive and I looked at it, what I saw right then and there was that there were the funding source, the way the bill was being written. One was the Tiger Grant. There was an infrastructure bill. And at that time, everybody was still worried about infrastructure. The bill that he put forth had a Tiger Grant attached to it for appropriations and how we're going to pay for it. The problem with that is that the Tiger Grant was defunct, no longer existed. So that bill didn't hit the floor. The more and more I looked at the bills that were being presented, there were flaws that stopped them from hitting the floor. And that's when I said, you know what? We need change. We need someone who can actually write those bills, pass them, get them moving. And that's why I ran, because we weren't moving. And you could see it. Look at our district. In the last 10 years, we haven't had anything that's been passed for us. Have we grown in the last 10 years? On a federal level, have we had contracts coming in? I'm the leadership director for the Haitian Chamber of Commerce. Through that capacity, we've helped more than 3 companies acquire contracts of over $10 million. And so we have to be very clear about what changes the economic infrastructure or the dynamics of a district. It's always with acquisition of federal contracting, federal funding. And so we need to put someone in Congress who has a proven track record of being able to pull down those funds.
Bring home that bacon.
Right. And has a proven track record of giving those jobs. And it's interesting because during COVID, we had to bus people from Belgrade, 2 buses from Belgrade into Miami-Dade.
Yes, because I saw that.
Right, because we had jobs over there because 𝗘𝗟𝗘𝗖𝗓𝗘 was able to pull down 10 million just for canvassing. So let me tell you what that is. That's knocking on the door and saying, hey, would you like to take the vaccine? Can I tell you more about COVID-19? Whereas Broward County did not pull down that money for canvassing. And so we have to really look at and ask ourselves, why did they not put it down? What is really going on? How are we in this economic place where we have such high unemployment in certain areas in my district, and why we have such low income rates? There's a correlation with the leadership that we've seen before us. And we have to ask ourselves, that's what we're going to do. If we're going to translate the same ineffective leadership into Congress, and that's a totally different game in itself. But that's a real question we have to ask.
Yeah, I'm not going to take a side. I observed some of what you have said. I mean, just in terms of majority of our students in Broward County, for example, being on free and reduced lunches and things like that, the economics of our community as a whole haven't moved as far forward as I think they should. I don't know why we haven't tapped into some of the not only federal funds, but recruitment of certain industries. And I hope, whether it's from, the congressional office or within the local leadership here, we got to do some more economic development. And I think we haven't been able to, address moving people forward across the board. I think there are some people who are doing very well, but the majority of our citizens and our voters here across Broward County are not, as you were saying, partaking in some of the economic prosperity that they should. So it's something that I agree with you. I think it has to be addressed in a very significant way, particularly now that COVID-19 has ravaged, the hospitality markets and the retail market, and people are afraid to even go back to work. And now we don't have the extension of the unemployment boost anymore. The federal boost is gone. The renting moratorium is gone. So the eviction, I should say, moratorium is gone. So definitely this seat is going to have to get to work, whoever is elected, to make sure they're addressing some, like what you're saying, some of the economic issues that have not been addressed adequately. I see you, Sandra, go ahead. Yes, I see another question. She addressed this. She did say she worked for Autism Speaks. She did say she lobbied for them. But go ahead and what you were saying.
So with Autism Speaks, I just wanted to clarify, with Autism Speaks, I was part of the grassroots network. And so we went and we lobbied with them or advocated with them on the advocacy days. And I wanted to mention that I want to make it very clear, because I know there's a lot of people who want to say, oh, you lobbied for corporations. I never lobbied for corporations. Okay. I never got paid for lobbying. That was all of my dollars that went towards advocacy, that went up there on my own dime, who participated in writing bills, drafting amendments on my own dime to push those issues forward. That has been 100% me. And also, I did want to mention that we've had so many different initiatives when it came towards bringing resources into the community. And what it really is a skill. And that's why people say, oh, it's really difficult to develop the economy, but it's a skill. There's a way to know how to do it. And
to create a job.
Correct. Yeah, right.
Absolutely. Not everybody has written a check for someone else, and paid someone else. It's true. It's true.
Right. Yeah. So being able to create jobs, it comes directly with understanding how to understand the federal propositions, like the federal bills that are being passed. If there's money being put into telemedicine, do we have a telemedicine company here that we can help match them to that grant, match them to that funding, and help push them in that position? And could we train some people up to actually be able to expand telemedicine? That's a skill, and it does take a good legal background to understand it, and a business background to be able to do that.
Thank you. Dr. Rant says, thank you for addressing my question. Hey, thank you. All right, another question here. Thank you, Oral J. Ferguson. What are you doing to help people update? I don't know if this is a job, but we're going to ask, what are you doing to help update helping people update their voting information? Yes, we've had some major changes, SB 90 in particular, due to some of the changes made at the state level. Hi, Oral. Thank you. What say you, my dear?
So we have an aggressive campaign going where we're helping them fill out their applications by directing them to the supervisor of elections. But the biggest thing we've been doing, especially when we go into minority communities and churches, we let them know of the changes. Because a lot of people don't know of the changes. They don't know that you need to really make sure that your signature matches. They don't know that you have to make sure you can drop it off at this drop box. So that educational part, we have been aggressive with letting people know, letting them know in English, Spanish, and Creole. So these are a lot of things that we've been pushing forward so we can be very clear.
Awesome. So yeah, we got to thank you for clarifying the Autism Speaks response. Thank you very much. And we have one more question here. Did you practice law in the healthcare field? Very specific.
No, I
Not
did
in the
healthcare regulation.
field.
Yeah, I did healthcare regulation. And so healthcare regulation is where you're looking at the regulations to make sure the policies match. But I'm sure Sandra knows healthcare regulation.
No, Sandra's an attorney too, my girl. Yes, she does. So you were in healthcare regulation. So that's a combo of legal and governmental aspects in terms of practicing law. Okay, cool.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to get back to some of your platform issues. Thank you to our audience. Let me do a reset here. Welcome if you're just joining us. This is Let's Talk Justice. I'm your host, Suzette Speaks. We are talking to candidates every Saturday, 12 noon, who are running in the Florida Congressional District 20 special election that is set for November 2nd. We are here today with the illustrious Ms. Sheila Cherfilus McCormick. She is one of the candidates, and she's just talking a little bit more about her personal background as we now shift into some of her policies that she wants to see implemented if elected. So I am so excited. The questions are rolling in, Sheila. I want to ask you a few. Can I get a few in, though? Let me get a couple in because I love the fact that we can interact. This is the public square. This is where we want, your potential voters to connect with you and hopefully be able to speak to you directly because how are they? I was going to do, they can call your office, but, or send an email. But it's also good to, get on the spot interaction with folks in the district. So we're grateful. Everyone watching from around the world, around the country, welcome. Please do drop a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. And if we don't get your comments right now, I'll be sure to send her the link and then she can respond to you directly then. Okay. So I'm going to ask there are a couple of things I want to tie your healthcare background into. You've been an active part of the COVID response. We have seen a major executive order just passed enacted, I should say, by our President Biden in the last, 48 hours or so, that has now mandated. I think he's trying to say, listen, I want everyone to get a vaccine. We had him say, I guess it was late 2020, no one should be made to get a vaccine. But now we've had a shift through, I think it's through OSHA. He's now saying any company with more than 100 employees is now mandated to require their employees to get the vaccine. Now, we've had some dust ups. Of course, we're going to ask you, you have been on the ground within, the COVID-19 fight. And of course, in specific and broadly speaking, as a healthcare professional, what are your thoughts on this new executive order?
I think it's timely, but it should have came earlier. The reason why I think it should have came earlier, there's a combination of things that have been going on consistently. A lot of the funding that was being put out for misinformation campaigns, for information, driving information into the minority communities, into our district, it didn't get into the hands of actually people in the district so they can do the teaching part. So there's still a lot of misunderstandings that are out there. What we need to do now is try to kind of backpedal, because now we're saying everybody has to get vaccinated or do tests. But where is that information part? It's still left out. And that has to be addressed. All the funding that came into the state, who received it? Were they able to deliver the education into the community? They didn't. And so I think that what he's doing is timely and we need it. And we find that what the president really is doing is fighting against our governor, because our governor isn't taking into his hands what he needs to do to protect the entire state by letting people make decisions based on false information. Our COVID numbers are through the roof. It's very frustrating when we're sitting there trying to speak to people about safety and COVID and the vaccine and give them the realities of the vaccine, and it's only one person who's there. So we have to have a bigger push to ensure that we're being protected from it. I support the vaccine. I've supported the vaccine from the beginning, and we see that people who have the vaccine, even if they do get COVID again, it's not at the same extent. And when you combine COVID with the diseases people had before, that's where it becomes a death sentence. And in our community, it's expedited because that's our problem. We have issues with those factors that lie within us.
Absolutely. And I think that was Dream Hustles. How are you? Welcome. He's saying the same thing. He's like, what tactics will you use to inform specifically the Black community on health as far as medicine? I think that's what you just spoke to, that the
Right.
education piece is not kind of being coupled, well enough with
Right.
the mandate. So it sounds like, we're still not, I don't know if it's the door knocking and the canvassing on what we need to do to make people more what should I say, have more information and get more comfortable with, now that it's officially approved, it's not a conditional approval anymore. It's, all the different things that will, allow for, possibly greater acceptance of. And there are still going to be people who are saying, oh, no, I don't vaccine. I don't know what, my microchip they're going to give me. And I'm like, microchips, really? So, yes, I do agree with you. And I think that addresses that. And I think, hi, guys, I think this is a good question, Dr. Grant, but I think it's because of the questions from the audience. Dr. Grant says, so I see Sheila's very versed on healthcare, but can she speak to the district overall? I want to pivot. Trust me, I want to pivot now because a lot of healthcare is her main background in terms of business. But yes, I want to address a little bit broader speaking. How are you? So we have Queen of the South, welcome, saying, hey, Suzette. And she says, hey, Sheila, welcome. We're so glad. Thank you very much. We are going to go into a little bit of different direction. I agree with you. I just want to allow the conversation to flow, but I agree with you. There are some other broader issues we want to cover here today. So I want to get back a little bit more to your economic plan. And for those of us who live in South Florida, we see your commercials on TV, girl. You're looking good on TV. And you mentioned it here just now, and I want to make sure you address it because a lot of people are not familiar with this concept of minimum basic income. I think if you followed the, campaign of Andrew Yang for president, he brought this to the fore and made it a more popular concept. People didn't even know what it was. And I see you support it. And I don't know if people know what a minimum basic income is. And B, why do you support it? And again, it has drawn also some criticism because people are like, what? People are going to get money, free money, government money. Oh my gosh. It's going to be all over, the news that, this candidate really supports this. It's so much so that it's in your commercial. So can you explain to folks what is the concept and why or where it originated from and why you are in support of the minimum basic income?
So it originated from actually Martin Luther King. That was his last issue that he was actually fighting for was a minimum basic income. And what Andrew Yang, he kind of revived the conversation that was happening but, in the back rooms, actually. But what shifted with COVID is now people realize that we are in an economic issue, economic downturn. And we couldn't predict where we were going to be with COVID. And so now the conversation of UBI became more popular. But UBI now, the conversation that we're having is more of a pilot, and it's been a test kind of form. So even the checks that we received before, which were stimulus checks, that was a form of UBI, but it was based on limited approval based on every time they approve it. So what we were talking about, and I brought this up earlier, this conversation about how is the United States going to recover, the Delta variant, presenting itself and now putting us back to a place of uncertainty, that kind of elevated the conversation to, okay, we got to do something now for economic recovery because it's looking like we won't make it. Certain communities won't make it. So what I want everybody to understand is that 8 months ago, I wrote a plan called the People's Prosperity Plan, and it was based off of what I saw going on in D.C., how we're going to recover. And when I wrote that plan, I said that we should get $1,000 a month as economic recovery checks until we recover. From that, we have we laid out everything. If we were to do a vax tax, do another tax for people who are selling private information at 5%, and we did also automation tax in which people who move towards automation, and didn't bring back those jobs, we were going to have at least $600 billion to fund that $1,000 per month.
Time out. You going kind of fast. I'm gonna break it down because I'm loving it. There's nothing wrong with what you're saying. I'm just in I'm watching the chat and I'm like, oh, they got more questions. So I'm calling it minimum basic income. I should actually say universal basic income. UBI is what you've been using. Okay. Right. So I am going to go to this question from that kind of ties in with that. Snuggles668 says, what does it take to determine a minimum basic income and what does a country need to do to sustain it? I think that's the biggest question. I talked to my critics, my mom and dad. I'm like, do y'all believe in this? That every American should get a universal basic income just to guarantee a certain basic standard of living. And yours, I've seen on the commercial, says $1,000 a month. So you're saying through the pandemic, I just want to be very clear on,
Correct.
and you're saying how you're going to pay for it, which is, you said,
Yes.
through innovation tax, and break down what a vax tax is. So, because it sounds like vaccine, but it's not vaccine. So I want to make sure I know. That's why I say, and I know some of the acronyms, but for people watching, I want to like, okay, let's open this up, peel back that onion a little bit for those who are not familiar. So what would qualify? Who would qualify for this? And thank you for that question. What does Sheila say to her critics that her numbers don't add up and the country cannot afford a UBI for everyone that makes 75K and below is another question I see. So I just wanted you to kind of slow down a little and give us some background as to who qualifies and how long and how. Again, I got most of it, but I just don't want people to be, that was fast. But go ahead and tell us who would qualify.
So who qualifies? Anybody who's 18 and over and makes less than $75,000 per year.
That's 18 and over, less than 75. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so after that, we would have a value added tax, right? So certain people, certain big corporations, now I'm not talking about little mom and pops or anybody, huge corporations, they pay a VAX tax, which is a value added tax. That value added tax is actually normal throughout the whole world, except for here, it's normalized, right? So people, if you have a company here and you're Jeff Bezos, you don't pay that kind of tax, which is why we're having issues funding certain projects, because we don't have that tax. Another tax is the
so like the tax that when you go to another country and you have to pay the duty fee or something like this?
No, it's not a duty. It's a value added. So other countries, if you have a corporation and you're making like billions, you pay a value added tax. Here in the United States, that value added tax could be anywhere between like 7% some places. Here, you don't have a real value added tax. We were saying if we would have do a value added tax of 5%, or 10%, that would give you $1 trillion from some of these countries. And we know the companies, right? We know who they are already. That would give us $1 trillion. But let's say we don't do the value added tax, right? And we just move. Because some people are like, oh, well, I might make $1 billion this year. Okay, you might make that $1 billion this year. Let's not even do that. And because the value added tax, that VAX tax, that's $1 trillion. So if we
this is different from a corporate income tax.
Yeah, no, yes, totally different.
Okay, I'm just making sure, because I'm going to the questions like, what if I were listening and what would I think? So it's different and separate, because I'm like, but companies are taxed. No, not the corporate income tax.
Yes,
separate
not that.
It's value added tax. Y'all will have to do your homework. We're going to move it on. Okay, so as you said, $1 trillion can be raised through that. Right. And how long would you? Yeah, go ahead.
The next tax that we can do is the automation tax. Now, the automation tax is a lot of companies move towards automation because they said of COVID, it was easier. They moved towards automation. Those companies have not returned those jobs. And so right now we should have an automation tax because they're having the profit and we're still having to help other people who can't even support to live. So they lost their jobs.
So like the people who sent, excuse me for interrupting, people who sent jobs overseas, or, I'm thinking about car manufacturers, things like that when you say automation?
Yeah,
or are you talking about people who mechanize jobs here?
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Okay, just want to make sure, because I'm hearing the terms and I'm trying to break it down for everyone. Yes.
So if you go into CVS, right, and you see that there's no cashiers, but there's more people there for you to self-scan, that they would have the automation tax. You go to the bank, right?
Nobody in the toll booth.
They have them set up.
I hear you.
Those are automation tax. Now, in the middle, in the beginning, it was because of COVID. It wasn't safe. So people started reducing staff. Those people should have to pay a tax. If we do a tax of 5% for automation tax, then that would bring us to like $400 billion. So there's ways for us to tax and spend.
So the people, don't mean to interrupt, but I'm just catching on now. So the people, sorry, I'm slow. So for the people who, or the companies who are changing over to a more automated, basically you don't have employees anymore, we would like to, because we're offsetting what the people who would normally work for you would earn, and they're no longer able to earn it because you've automated it, we're going to tax you and then put that into the public initiatives, etc. Okay, understood.
Right. And so those, if we have a full layout of the plan, and the people who said it doesn't add up, they haven't read the plan, and so I have to explain the process. The process is that we laid out everything, and this is what we do. Like, we work on bills, we write bills. So if you go to mypeoplesprosperity.com, it lays out everything. It does make sense. It all adds up. But more importantly, this was written probably 8 months ago. And recently, probably 2 months ago, a member of Congress proposed a similar bill, very similar to what we proposed. And in that bill, they asked for $1,200 until we recover. And 96 members of Congress signed, Democratic members of Congress signed on to that. So 96 members signed on to the program of 1,200. And we said 1,000. And our taxing program and spending program is the same. And including in that 96 Democrats who signed up for it, who are onto that bill as it was being proposed, 𝗩𝗢𝗚 Wilson and also Lois Frankel. We have majority of the Florida delegation. So I say to, because I know a lot of my competitors say, okay, it never happened. You know, that kind of explains their mindset and why our district hasn't gone forward. 8 months ago, I wrote that. And now we
listen, Miss Sheila, one thing I know about you, you can write a bill. You've done that. You're like...
So I say to people who are like, it could never happen. It just did. They're looking at 1,200, but we must understand why. Is because we're in the process of having a potential economic downturn. And I think that's the reality. And that's why I fight for the community so much. In addition to that, people aren't even understand that we live right now in a world of UBI, the child credit tax, the income tax that you're getting, that is UBI, my dear. I just want everybody to be clear. That was one of the proposals.
Different form. It doesn't sound like a check coming to you, but they're not taking out as much tax, if you will.
Well, no, no, when people are getting, we're on
you get a check back, you get a cash back.
Yeah, if you have a child right now, you are getting a child income tax. Now we're going to we had 3. We're going on to
they get
fourth.
A check? I didn't know that. See, I don't have no check.
Now I asked Suzette, is that equitable? Is that equitable? So you're saying that only certain people can recover.
So people during COVID and got the child income, they got additional money back from their taxes that they paid?
No, they get it every month. They're going on this is going to be the 4th check that's coming. If you have children, this is the 4th check that's coming that you're about to receive.
I'm about to adopt somebody, okay? And I said that with love. I did not know that. So there is a form of UBI going on right now.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
Yes.
And
that's
what was it?
That's President Biden.
What was the child income check just given early? Was it just given early? Did you see that question?
No, it wasn't given early. They're going on the 4th check right now. If you look at it, they're going on the 4th check. The governor, the senator right now, Rubio, he has a huge issue with Biden because he said Biden ushered in UBI. This is everything that's been publicized and been everywhere. So if we see, and so the reason that you have to ask yourself, why did 96 Democrats in Congress sign on to the bill for 1,200? I just said 1,000. If you look at my bill that was written 8 months ago, I'm not saying she stole my stuff, but I'm just saying that it looks really close to what we wrote 8 months ago.
Oh, boy.
And that we put everywhere. I'm just saying.
I wish I was more knowledgeable with the facts. I don't want to put nothing out there that I can't confirm or deny. But according to you, okay, let's just make sure.
If you go on and you look at Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, look at her bill. It's called the Support Act. The Support Act, you can pull it up. You'll see it. Look at ours. It's very similar. In addition to that, the reason why she even went towards that is because what started happening in the country is that different mayors in different municipalities started experimenting with their own version of economic recovery checks, which have been, seen as UBI, right? And so what we all became aware of is that our district, poor districts now, if we are left to having just your area, a poor district, there's no way we can afford to give those checks or do that, the same thing. So if we had it instead as a universal, like federal, then everybody has the same opportunity to recover. So that's what this is. But I think that this highlights what this election really is about. This election is about, are we going to move forward, or are we going to stay back in the mindset that keeps us cemented in poverty? That's what this election is. I've been able to fight and work very hard as a child of immigrants to build generational wealth, to build jobs, to build an economic structure for people around me, and to have growth. And that's why I can see and propose bills that actually protect us and help us grow economically. But people who haven't built growth, people who haven't, actually done the work of creating jobs, it seems to me that there's a mindset that keeps cementing them into poverty. And so they'll say it could never happen. And you want to go to Congress, but you're not looking at what Congress is talking about. You're not looking what's being discussed. And so that's where I think is the determining factor here. Are we going to grow? Or are we going to sit back and keep electing the same people who said it can't happen when it is happening?
Last question, and I'm going to pivot because I see so many more questions, but we got to get to some environmental questions. I want to get to the 9/11 celebration and Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan and what we're going to do going forward. So I want to get to a couple more topics. So I thank you and I appreciate everybody watching and tuning in, those leaving comments. Keep rolling. Even if we don't get to it right now in the show, we will make sure Sheila will go back and answer. I will go back and answer as well, or forward it to her so that you guys can get an answer. Welcome to Let's Talk Justice. For those who are just tuning in, let me do a quick reset here. I am 𝗩𝗢𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗡 Speaks, TV host and attorney. I am based in South Florida, and for our Saturday series at around 12 noon every Saturday, we're going to be, for the next several Saturdays, meeting the candidates in the race for Congressional District 20. You are viewing on your screen right now one of those illustrious candidates. Her name is Miss Sheila Cherfilus McCormick. She is handling the hard questions today, guys. And I'm so glad she's taken time out of her busy schedule to talk to the people, talk to the voters. So we are grateful that she's here again. I cannot believe the questions are rolling in. I just can't believe the level of interest, and I'm just excited about it so that we can get our voters, fully informed with, who you are and what you believe in. So I'm grateful. Last question on UBI. Would it be in perpetuity? Would it be for every, or under the 75,000 forever, or how long, or what is the time frame on that? And I'm going to encourage you, if you guys don't think that numbers add up, let's check the website. She says the numbers do, so we're not going to go back and forth on that. But how long would this last?
No, it can't go in perpetuity. Like anything that's for infinity can never happen. What it has to do is be as long as we're looking at this financial downturn. As of right now, they're saying it's going to take maybe 5 to 7 years to recover from COVID. So if it's 5 to 7 years for the entire country, what does it look like for District 20, where we already had the highest numbers of unemployment, where we already had the highest number of poverty? So that means our years are going to be even more. So if we can do that within 4 years, 2 years, 3 years, but we have to ask for something. Leaving a void and sitting back and saying, oh, we can just sit back and, figure it out is wrong, because everybody else is fighting for their district. So we need someone who's going to be there and fight for us too. If someone else is getting an economic recovery check, we need to be getting it also. I can tell you right now, the biggest fight that people are pushing forth in Congress is for seniors to get a check. So that's eventually going to happen. They're going to have a check for seniors. That means, again, 𝗩𝗢𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗓, anybody who does not have kids, which is a lot of the unemployed in our district.
Where we at?
So
no kids, no 55 and older, no. We on the back end. We are in the back burner. Oh my!
So we got to step up and say something.
Yeah, so I hear you. You're saying more equity across the board. People are suffering regardless, so I hear you. Now I want to pivot, guys. We have about 15 minutes left-ish. So I want to pivot. I saw a question here about environmental policies. Obviously, being South Florida, we have seen the effects of climate change, or people would say alleged climate change, but I'm not one of those. I believe in climate change. Our governor may not, but I do. So what are your thoughts on the climate change issue? Are there bills that are currently in Congress? I'm sure you are abreast of what's going on. Or are there proposed bills that you would like to see brought forward, particularly, as he said, that affects the Black community? Of course, we have had king tides, everything from flooding down here. We had a little rain the other day, and it wasn't even a real hurricane, and Miramar was underwater. And half the city, well, y'all don't know, we didn't even have a real hurricane. This was like a few months ago. And I was like, the canals and the roads, I know we live in a swamp, or a former swamp. Okay, I'm going to act like we're, 6 feet above sea level. But still, it was quite frightening. So where are you in terms of environmental issues?
Environmental issues are one of the top things on my list, especially because it is tied to our social justice issues. If you look at how our district, like even how the wind blows and they allow pollutants to go in one direction when it's blowing towards Black community, that is totally a social justice issue. And it's because it's poor Black communities. And we see that we're allowed to even get worse water than other communities are. So the environment is huge, but climate change, and we see it in combination with the poor infrastructure, is where it becomes deadly to our districts and our community. If we don't do something very quickly and very soon, as far as pushing both the the environmental issues and the Green New Deal, which does, the Green New Deal within itself brings in a lot of jobs and environmental sustainability programs within the district, we're going to have huge problems. Look at what this hurricane did in places that don't usually have flooding issues, like New York and New Jersey. Could you imagine if it came here? So our issues have to be tied together. Climate change, environmental with infrastructure is so important right now.
Would you support the infrastructure bill that's being proposed right now?
I do. I support it, but I think there has to be more money just because for the reasons that I said. If we're even going to put 3.5 billion into it, is that going to be enough for us to start repairing and start building what we need to do to block any kind of floods that we have? Is that going to be enough for the whole country? Remember that. Now,
Yeah.
the whole country has issues with water and piping. In our district, we have continuous issues in West Palm Beach with water. We have continuous issues even trying to get fresh water.
Yeah.
So water is becoming our biggest issue in this district moving forward. And a lot of people aren't even realizing that.
Yeah, there's a lot more to go into. I'm going to pivot yet again, guys. Thank you for watching. Get your final questions in. I'm talking to Miss Sheila Cherfilus McCormick, candidate for Florida Congressional District 20. Don't forget to vote November 2nd here. If you're in South Florida, Broward County, stand up. Palm Beach County, stand up. She is a dynamic woman. Of course, I have tried to touch on various areas. Our chat is popping today. I'm excited. Thank you so much for watching, tuning in, liking, sharing, and subscribing. You guys don't even know. And Sheila, I'm going to pivot a little bit to today. Today is the remembrance of the 9/11 attacks. Of course, you know, I was watching it earlier, like so many of you. I listened to a bunch of programs yesterday. I was watching, what was it, Diane Sawyer. She followed the babies of 9/11 for 20 years. And I was watching those families and the mothers and the widows and everybody who was directly, and us as a country that have just been impacted and across the world. So I want to know your thoughts on the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And if we are going to still have to, well, we do still have to fight terrorism. It's not going away. Clearly, the Taliban came in that boy, you know, lickety split. And we're back to, and I won't say we're back to where we were started, but a lot of people feel that way. I've had so many conversations with people like, well, you know, that was a waste of $2 billion. And, you know, I would say, you know, something Trump started, the withdrawal, Biden had to finish. So it didn't go as smoothly. And, you know, people had a lot of qualms about, you know, why did we spend so much time there? We did, you know, get Osama, you know, disrupt Al-Qaeda, but we stayed 20 years though. So what are your thoughts when it comes to foreign policy, particularly as it relates to Afghanistan and the Taliban and the war on terror? Where are you in terms of those issues?
The war on terror is really amplifying itself. And I wish that we didn't pull out. But I think by the time that the president had an opportunity to really sit and look at the situation, so much was done by Trump moving out that there was really no real option for us to go back in or to level up quickly to be able to counter the attacks that were going on. And we have to look at the terrorism from the entire world. There has been a rise in authoritarian dictatorships and movements and presidents who really have been aligning themselves with more terrorist organizations, secretly or publicly. We see that terrorists now or these organizations are funding certain educational programs within colleges, and we're finding the money going in so they can spread different kinds of campaigns. So our terrorism issue is huge, and we have to pay attention to it. And it just morphed in a different direction now, where the objective is to try and implement a strategy of bad information to our children or the vulnerable to get them to turn on us and to come in. So we have to take it seriously and really start building back a structure to get back into the Middle East, to take control of it as best as we can. We can't stop people from doing what they're doing, but we have to take control over it and not leave ourselves vulnerable.
Do you think we were in Afghanistan for too long?
No, I think that we were in Afghanistan and weren't able to carry out the whole mission. We weren't able to carry out the whole mission. And if we had pulled out earlier, we would have seen more terrorist issues just evolving earlier, because it's still growing. They're still getting funded by neighboring states. And that's the truth. You know, they're still putting a whole bunch of money into plot and plan on how to come into the U.S. and terrorize our allies.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had, in your opinion, to stay there, although like the ending seems like, oh my gosh, what did we do? What did we get? I am going to pivot a little bit more to local issues. You guys are watching Let's Talk Justice. I'm Suzette Speaks, along here with our special guest, Miss Sheila Cherfilus McCormick. Look for her name on the ballot. If you are in South Florida, particularly Broward County, Palm Beach County, November 2nd is the special election. You can even order early voting ballot. Go to your supervisor of elections website, and you can order a ballot if you don't want to go to the polls, and you can vote by mail that way. So make sure you do that early. Go ahead and make sure your address is updated, your signature is updated, and of course, you need to know your proper polling location. So we want to make sure you guys are well aware. I am going to ask a few more questions, you guys. This is a speed round. We got like 10 minutes left. I am grateful that you've taken time out of your busy campaigning day, my darling, to sit with the voters and get some feedback from them. As far as other local issues, I know that our district here has a large Haitian American population, and I know TPS is a very big issue that affects many of the residents within the district. Where are your, I know it's going to be extended until when, I'm not quite sure. You might know better than me. Will we be able to have a long-term solution for those individuals that have been protected by TPS? It reminds me of DACA, the same type of concept. For those who are watching who don't know what TPS, can you quickly explain what it is and where does your stance? And maybe, do you believe that there is like a legislative solution coming, more permanent solution coming for those who have filed for TPS?
So TPS is temporary protective status that they have given to people fleeing their homeland because of political issues. Some of them have other issues. The Haitian community has been going back and forth for TPS along with other nations. The biggest issue that we have with TPS right now is that there's always this issue of renewal and not having a clear pathway to citizenship. Do I believe that we will automatically just have one, or Congress is going to put one forth? No. We have to have someone in Congress who's going to fight for a pathway to citizenship. And we have to have someone from our district, because our district, to be elected, you need so many immigrant votes that I believe that whoever goes, especially me, your priority should be to create a pathway to citizenship. Immigrants provide so much money from working, so much support. When we were hiring, we hired a whole bunch of immigrants who came to work every single day. And so we owe the community that. We owe them to give them a pathway to citizen. We've paid our dues being in the country and working this hard. So do we think that imaginary, like it's in the works? It's not. Some people are saying it is, but I don't see a hard push for it. It would have to come out of this district.
Yeah, it has to be, and again, I feel, me personally, I think there has to be a long-term solution soon, especially for DACA and especially for those under TPS. I think it was something that was kind of, what should I say, a short-term safeguard. People didn't want to say, okay, pathway to citizenship. They were nervous about that, but I do believe we need to address, people's lives. These are real people who have been contributing to an economy, paying taxes, staying out of trouble, and all that. And that's what the American dream is, starts where it starts when it comes to immigration and proving, listen, I want to be a contributing member of this society. I agree with its values and its norms, and I just want to live my life and be an American like anyone else. What's up? We really want to, I hope, like you're saying, there is some sort of long-term solution, a legislative, a legal solution for those folks soon. I want to go into some local issues, mask mandate, our governor. Of course, you're going to be, if elected, on the federal level. Do you think there should be a federal mask mandate?
Yes.
You do? Okay. And what way? Through companies, same way he's done, President Biden has done the vaccine requirement, or what ways are you thinking?
I think through schools and definitely large businesses. You must. Even certain larger businesses that you're frequenting in, I think there should. And the reason why is because there are different variables and different variants that are popping up with COVID. We don't have enough people who are being vaccinated. We have this anti-vax movement where people are intentionally exposing everyone. And so until we can get people educated, which if Biden's going to put these mandates, he needs to put the funding back into the community. The mistake was already made. That funding came, it didn't come into the community. The education was not done. Now it has to be done again. And so we have to ensure that he puts the money behind the requirements and that it comes into our district and comes into the small businesses in our district who have the branding capability, who have the capability to bring in that information to the people, even if they're bringing it into different local organizations, nonprofits, churches, so they can do the outreach and ensure that we're actually taking affirmative steps to protecting ourselves. So until they do that, we need to have a mask mandate.
Yeah, I think, again, I don't understand the debate, but listen, I'm with you on that one. I see a couple questions back at the TPS. Why do, Haitians have TPS and Mexicans have DACA? It's a little different.
Yeah.
It's a little different because DACA was for, early childhood arrivals where people were underage and brought. So I see you looking, girl. I know you got places to be. What role, if any, do you think the United States should play in Haiti? That's a very good question. Thank you, Sandra. What do you think?
That is a great question. I've been working with the Haitian election, NEON, the National Haitian Elected Officials Network. We've been working aggressively with each other because one of the issues that we have without having a Haitian American in Congress is that when certain things happen in Haiti, they don't ask the diaspora first. And that doesn't happen to any other place. If something is going on in Israel, they ask the Jewish members in the United States, they ask different.
Uh-oh. You got to unmute. Hold on. Let me go to me. A little technical difficulty.
Okay.
Unmute yourself. You back? Okay.
Yes, I'm back.
That means we are about to wrap in just a few. Finish your thought, and then I'll leave you with a closing statement. Go ahead.
Okay, so what we have to do is increase accountability, and we have to use the Haitian American organizations such as the National Haitian American Nurses, the National Haitian American Attorneys, National Haitian American Pharmacists. We have to use those organizations who have the cultural capacity already to go in and to do that work. Because right now we see that $32 billion is going into Haiti, and those organizations, they're not clearly, we don't know who all of them are. We don't know how much money they're getting. And there's really no transparency. So
I'm not going to get on that. Yes,
we're
Lord.
about to repeat exactly what
the Haitian people don't see the money.
Right.
So where's the money, guys? I'm just sorry.
So we're about to repeat what happened in 2010 all over again. No. So I've been fighting side by side with NEON, having different meetings to ensure that they can have an accountability portal in which we can ensure that we know what's going on. And that funding that they're sending to Haiti, why not use Haitian Americans here? They do that in Israel. We know that over $5 trillion goes
or in Cuba.
Right. So they need to start respecting the organization, respecting the Haitian people here, consulting us and using us in Haiti, where we actually have a tie and a relationship with it, and not just people who are coming there to make their money and leave.
And a unique understanding of the factors on the ground. Shout out to my Zoes watching. Hey, everybody. For South Florida, that's lingo for Haitian and Haitian Americans. I'm grateful. Thank you for this website. If you're looking to donate to Haiti, thank you, Dr. Grant. You can use this website as a clearinghouse. Again, we don't want the mistakes that were made in 2010 after the major earthquake. Then we obviously need to be much more specific and intentional with how and where best to spend these funds and to send, these donations, etc. So check out this website, guys, if you're interested in helping out Haiti. I am going to say thank you. Yes, that's for the national. Here it is, Haitian American Elected Officials Network. Thank you. So it's a beautiful conglomerate where people are actually who have ties, who are a part of the diaspora from Haiti, who would know what we need to do there. You can't just, make these decisions in a vacuum. So I'm glad they have stepped forward. They have a wonderful website. So I am going to wrap us up. Is there anything else we want to talk about in terms of your platform that I didn't touch on? The people have been very active in the chat. I know I didn't get to everybody. Don't be mad with me. I love all of you nonetheless. We are going to continue the conversation offline, and I want you to, leave us with some closing statements. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we start your closing statement?
I just wanted to mention the importance of preparing for the infrastructure bill and preparing our businesses, because one of the hardest things small businesses have is when they're trying to get contracts, they don't have the financial wherewithal, they don't have the bandwidth for it. We do have an investment group that we came together, and we even have different banks who have participated, who said they're creating new tools for small businesses so they can feel comfortable taking those loans. And that's what the focus is right now, especially since we see that there's redistribution of wealth going on, that we put our district on the forefront. And so that's just not us individually, but our businesses, our community, our nonprofits. We have to do an entire lift like a rising tide right now, and it has to be an intense push. And we need someone who can hit the ground running, who has the relationships in Congress, who already knows how to maneuver the legislative process, but more importantly, who knows how to use the power of the pen. And I have displayed that and done that on a regular basis, consistently in that sphere. And I've been serving the community. So I ask everyone humbly to look into my website, look into everything and all the heart that we did to make ourselves transparent and to really see this district grow.
I want you, can you see the chat on your end? Can you type your website in the chat? I don't know if you can. If you can't, I'll put your Sheila for Congress in the chat afterwards. I am so grateful you're here. There's so much more we could talk about, guys, but she got to go do what she came to do, which is the campaign. She came to give her information. You were so very thorough. I thank you so much, you guys. I appreciate all of you guys for watching. You can hear her passion. Vote, vote, vote. If you're in South Florida, November 2nd, you can start even during early voting. Thank you so much. Ooh, you got people watching your back. Okay, you throw it in there. Let us know. The conversation will continue offline, you guys. I have to let her go. I promise I'd get her out here in a reasonable amount of time. But there's so much she just said, even in that nugget. You know what the real UBI is, and universal basic income is government contracts and getting your business lined up. Y'all thought PPP was a lick. No, it's actually having a company that can take advantage. You talk about corporate welfare. That's the real welfare. Like when people think about redistribution of wealth, as she's talking about, the greatest redistribution of wealth is coming because of a vaccine, because of COVID-19 and all the not only medical, but support industries around that. That's where people are going to get paid. That's where if you have companies set up that can apply for government contracts, that your family and your whole next generation can be shifted. So what she's talking about, I can't even get into it with you, my sister, but I love what you're saying on the economic front. People are thinking about handouts, but there's another way to view that. When it comes to economics, we are not necessarily as ready as we should be within this district to take advantage of all the types of companies. People get contracts for, as you said, paying people to go knock on doors to tell people to go take the vaccine. This is a company. You know, you do not have to be, you know, the most sophisticated person in the world to jump on board and participate in all that taxpayer-funded money that's coming through COVID-19 relief. I'm sorry, I'm off my soapbox. I hear everybody. Thank you very much. All of you who've been watching, thank you so much. Please do subscribe. Please do like. Please do share. We thank you so much. We'll get to all y'all. Still questions coming in, but we got to go. I appreciate you, Sheila. Good luck on the campaign trail. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll get back to the questions that we didn't get to. She'll get the link and she'll answer then. Until next time, I'm Suzette Speaks. This has been Let's Talk Justice. Thank you, Miss Sheila Cherfilus McCormick, for spending time with all of us. All right, have a good day, y'all. See you soon. Thanks for watching.